Hello everybody and welcome to my video on this, the Nikon Coolpix L1. The L stands for life. Live, laugh, love, life. Also go out, grab yourself a couple of lattes, double fist the pumpkin spice and the brown sugar caramel apple macchiato. That is what this camera wants you to do. Alright, so let's go over this camera. These are cameras. Alright, we're going to go over the Nikon L1. This is a digital point-and-shoot camera, meaning it is a digital camera, and it is designed to just point at your subject and shoot, and it will do everything else for you. It has a 6.2 megapixel, 1 by 2.5 inch sensor. I don't remember what the actual name of that is, but the sensor size is 5.76 millimeters by 4.29 millimeters, and it has a CCD sensor because it is an older camera back when CCDs were the standard. It has 256 zone matrix metering with center weighted metering capabilities, shutter speeds of 4 seconds to 1/2000th of a second, and a 0.7 frames per second burst speed, which honestly, even by the time when this was released, was kind of slow. The ISO range on this camera is unknown, but it can't be controlled at all, so it doesn't matter. You have no input into what the camera's sensitivity is, and nowhere could I find anything that indicated what it was, not in Nikon's publications, not in any of the limited like Wikipedia entries or whatever about this camera. There's nowhere that says what the ISO is on this, ISO range for this camera is. But I can tell you at high ISO, it's really noisy. At any rate, and high, by the way, is probably like 400. The flash sync on this is at an unknown speed, which again, it cannot be controlled and you can only use the built-in flash. So it doesn't really matter what the flash sync speed is, it'll use the shutter speed that it needs. This has a 5x zoom, you can see right here, with an f2.9 to f5.0 optical zoom lens. That's this right here. You can see the 2.9 through 5.0, and it's 6.3 through 31.4 millimeters, which in 35 millimeter full frame camera terms would be the equivalent of having a 38 through 190 millimeter zoom on the front of your camera. The target market for this camera was the entry-level user. Now, there are some things that tell us about that. Number one, the things that you cannot control, the number of things you can't control tell us that. It uses AA batteries, which are not standard on higher-end cameras. It has a plastic tripod socket, which is something that is not standard on higher-end cameras. The camera controls most of the functions that you can use it with, and relatively speaking, there are very, very few functions that even exist for you to control within this camera. It has a fairly abysmal close focus of 50 centimeters, which here in the US is 19.7 inches. In macro mode, you can focus to as close as 4 centimeters, which is 1.6 inches. The buffering on this is up to 3 JPEGs, and that in high res, or 6 JPEGs in standard resolution. And it includes a 10 megabyte internal memory, but it also accepts SD cards, but I could not find any information anywhere that indicates the maximum size of SD card that this camera can take, but I feel like I put in a 4 gig and it didn't like that. Might have been a 2 gig that it didn't like as well. Anyway, I had to pull out the smallest SD cards I could find to use in here. It was, however, a good general carry-around camera, and the simplicity of it does mean it is very good at being just picked up and used to take quick photos that you can share with people. And being a 6.2 megapixel camera, yes, it is still amply capable of taking photos you can share on your social media stream. This was made by Nikon in China from 2005 until unknown. However, it was probably discontinued either the same year in 2005 or in 2006. And that's I say that solely because point-and-shoot cameras have a very short production life, because the development cycle on these back when they were being made in any sort of quantity or at all was fast. They churned new models out every year to keep people buying new ones. And that's not just Nikon, that was every camera maker. And this was preceded by nothing directly. as it was the first camera in what became the very prolific Life series of Coolpix cameras. It was concurrent with many, many other Nikons, including at least 10 other Coolpix camera models just in 2005. That's how common point and shoots were, by the way. This video is being recorded in 2021, probably won't go live until 2022, and 16 to 17 years ago, Nikon had 11 point and shoot models that they released in 2000 in 1 year. That's a staggering number of models. Most likely this was followed by the Canon L2. I feel, or the Nikon L2 rather. I feel like that's a pretty safe bet on my part, but nowhere could I find that link drawn conclusively. So as we do, let's go over some of the things that are on the camera so we know what they are. Later in this video, we'll go through what all of them are and how, or what all of them do. This is your speaker for playing back video, your microphone for recording audio during video. This is your Coolpix logo impressed into the plastic right there. This is your power button. This is the shutter button right here, the big silver one. This is your shooting mode switch right here, this silver thing that's kind of on the back, kind of on the top. And your shooting modes are still, standard still, scene is a still mode. So standard still is basically green button. It's full auto on the camera's part. Scene mode gives you control over what set of settings the camera uses. And then you have movie mode over here. And then here's your strap lug holder over on this side with the camera strap that this came with. On the front of the camera, we have the maker, the model, the informational sticker about what the camera offers, the flash, and this is the, I believe this is the self-timer indicating light, and then of course the lens. On the camera's back, we have a bunch of stuff. We have the LCD screen here, again the Nikon logo, your wide and telephoto zoom toggle right here, your menu button, flash control, shutter self-timer button, exposure value compensation, your OK button to confirm functions, macro mode button, play button, and delete button right there. The blue indicators are additional features, right? So here this wide can also be used to scroll out when you're playing back to see, instead of just one photo, a row of them or multiple rows of them. This is your zoom in button when you're doing playback. This is your print order control. Your OK button does print order and computer communication when you're in playback, and then playback. And you know that these blue ones all do playback functions because the blue play button corresponds with the color of those functions. On the camera's bottom, we have the tripod socket, registration information, made in China, Nikon Corporation Japan, serial number. This is your battery chamber right here, and SD card chamber in the back behind the batteries. So while we have this upside down, since this camera can do nothing at all without batteries, I'll show you how to change them. You just open up the compartment, you just slide out the batteries that were in there, you go and you grab your fresh batteries, drop them in exactly like this. Now there are guides on the back of the battery chamber to let you know how to put them in. Slide them into place and you are set to go with new batteries. The memory card is a similar process. You access the battery chamber and then the memory card just slides right in there. This one absolutely will not for any reason work. It's a 128 gig, but I'll show you how to insert the memory card with it. That's how it goes. So you just slide it into place and then you close the door. The memory card is inserted, and then to remove it you just push it down and it ejects. The memory card is inserted so that when you look at the front of the camera you see the back of the memory card. So it does take SD cards. The maximum size, like I said, is unknown, but I think it's either 2 gigs or less. And this is an old camera. It's a now, as of this video's recording, 16-year-old camera, so it is going to need older SD cards. It does not recognize SDXC cards, and I don't think it recognizes SDHC cards either. All right, let's start going over the command pad functions. We're going to start here with the flash button. So I am in full auto mode right now. I'm going to hit the flash button, and my choices are auto flash, flash with red eye reduction, no flash, standard flash, and backlit, oh, come on, backlit flash. So auto will pick the best flash for the scene based on what the camera thinks it needs. Red eye reduction will pre-fire the flash a couple times so that when you're taking pictures of people, their pupils close and you don't have red eye from them. No flash turns off the flash. This is standard flash. It will just fire. There's no automatic control. It just does its thing. And this is backlit flash, which means, or night scene flash. So if you have a subject standing in front of a cityscape at night and you want to illuminate them and capture the cityscape in detail, you would use this mode right here. We're just going to, and then you push OK to select the flash mode that you want. The self-timer button is on or off. I believe it's a 10-second self-timer. We're just going to leave that off. The macro button is again on or off, and that allows the close focus. I believe that the macro does not allow infinity focus. I tried using it with this camera when I took test shots with it. It was a bit wonky. Over here we have the E exposure value button, which allows you to intentionally over or underexpose your images by up to 2 stops in either direction. You just have to select your over or underexposure amount and then select OK, and it will do that. And then the OK button confirms all of those features. All right, so that's that. You can see here also the telephoto and wide. What they do with the zoom is they zoom the lens in just like that. Yeah, no images on the camera. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is go into the menu button here, and we're going to run through all of the different things here. So we're going to start with the setup menu. All right, shooting menu. This is such a wonky interface. Okay. The shooting menu starts with the welcome screen, and your options are to turn it off, to have the Nikon splash, the animation splash, or to select an image that's saved to the memory within the camera. I'm going to go with disable. It just kind of takes up time during booting. You don't really need it. The date is allowing you to save the date onto so it's setting your timeline, you're setting your location, and whether or not you're currently in daylight savings, which we are. I don't know why I didn't do that. Doesn't matter. Anyway, we're going to select our location. You can change it with the left and right here. And then once you select it, you select OK. Now we can change the date, and this is actually September, wrong way, 29th. Oh goodness, got a long way to go here. There we go. What time is it? I think it's 10 o'clock at night. That's pretty darn close to it anyway. There we go. Okay. Okay. Nope, gotta go. Yes, now you can select your month, day, year format. Your date settings will reset every time you change the battery in these in all probability. I think they originally had a little button cell in them that saved that, but that is definitely going to be dead in these and not replaceable. So if you're going to be shooting with one of these, plan on setting the date setting every time you install new batteries if that's important to you. Monitor settings are your photo information. You can show, so what this is going to tell you is when you play back or take your photo, when you take your photo, what information is going to be at the bottom of your screen. Whether it's going to be the information that's shown, whether it is or isn't shown automatically, whether it's hidden, or if you're going to have the framing grid. The framing grid is a good idea. This will turn on when you're framing your images and will help you get level horizons and vertical verticals. And those are your options. Hit OK to select. Brightness allows you to adjust up or down the brightness of your monitor so that if you're shooting during the daylight, you can make it brighter and easier to see. And if you are shooting at night, you can turn it down to save your eyes. So date imprint on or off, off, date and time, date counter. Not entirely sure, I won't lie, what the date counter is. Looks like that's just counting the number of days of the year. I'm just going to suggest leaving it to off because that information should be saved in the EXIF data, which will be enough for you to, anyway. Sound settings, button sounds on or off, just depending on how annoying you want your camera to be. Shutter sound, loud, normal, or off. Personal preference and how annoying you want your camera to be when you take pictures. Startup sound, loud, normal, and off. I'm just going to turn all of these to off. It doesn't waste much battery to have sounds, but it wastes a little bit. Blur warning, on or off, and basically this will give you a warning if your shutter speed is too long for you to safely hold the camera in your hands without the images being blurry. Auto off, how long do you want it to be? I'm going to change it to 30 minutes just in case I start going on at length about some nonsense during this video and it turns off. Sleep mode on or off, and sleep mode is whether it will power off or just go to sleep. Format memory will format the memory inside of your camera, or I believe it will also format the SD card if you have one in. Language is what language you would like all of your information to be displayed in. And there are a bunch of different options here. Interface, and this is for connecting to your computer. Do you want to have how do you want the USB to be connecting to your computer? PTP or mass storage? Mass storage. Video mode, NTSC or PAL, depends strictly on where you live in the world. And auto transfer, how you want your files to be transferred automatically when you connect to a computer or not automatically. Now, I'm going to suggest leaving this to off. And who cares about your USB mode? These cameras' USBs are Generation 1 USBs. They are not fast. So what you want to do to get files from your camera to your computer, take the SD card out, plug it into your computer. That's going to be way faster than using the USB port that's built into this camera, which is on the side here. I think I forgot to cover it yeah, it is right here, when we were talking about the different things that are on this camera. Reset all is resetting all of the camera's menu functions. Battery type allows you to specify the battery type, whether it's alkaline, the rechargeable Nikons, or lithium batteries. I guess they're rechargeable, but they're alkaline works. This is your menu. Do you want it to be icons or text? Text is what we're seeing right now. Icons is more of the visual layout like this. It's just a matter of what you're more comfortable with and how you want to get your information. I happen to like text because I think it's a little bit easier to follow along. And then the firmware version is which version of the firmware that you have. And I believe that version 13 is the final version, and it is impossible to update the firmware on these anymore. The software for that has long since been deprecated from Nikon's website. Okay. That's the shooting menu. So we did that. The image mode. So that was under the setup menu, goes into the shooting menu, and then we have those 3 subpages. Image mode. The image mode is your image size. 6 megapixel high resolution, we'll leave it there. Normal resolution, 3 megapixel normal resolution. Your PC screen, which back in the day, 1024, which is the number of pixels horizontally across the screen, was really high. In 2005, I was pretty thrilled to have an 860 monitor. Or TV screen, which is 640. We're just going to leave this at 6 megapixels high resolution. White balance, you have auto white balance. You can access your white balance presets here, and that we're going to just cancel that because your white balance preset will measure what the camera is looking at right now, and it will create a white balance preset based on what the camera is looking at that moment. And then as long as that's checked after you create that preset, it will use that. So that would be, for instance, if you were really interested in doing tabletop studio photography with this camera. Not sure why, but you could do that. Daylight white balance, incandescent, fluorescent white balance, cloudy, or flash use white balance. Auto white balance is going to be fine 90% of the time, if not more. Your metering modes, matrix and center weighted. This is how you would change those. Matrix means that the 256 areas within the sensor contribute to the way that the meter is calculated. Nikon has always had really good matrix metering, and that did flow down to their entry-level or consumer-grade point-and-shoot cameras. Center weighted takes an area that's about this big, in the center of the frame, And somewhere between 60 and 75% of the metering data comes from that center part of the image. Center weighted would be really good if you were doing a lot of portraits of people with them standing at the center of the frame. Continuous shooting, single shot, one time. You push the shutter button one time, it'll take one photo and only ever one photo, no matter how long you hold it down. Continuous, as long as you hold the camera down, it will keep shooting for 3 photos until it underruns the buffer. 3 photos in high-res JPEG. Or multi-shot, 16 will take 16 shots. I believe that when it underruns the buffer, it will just space them out until when the buffer is cleared enough for another shot. BSS stands for Best Shot Selector, and what that does is it will take 10 photos in sequence, and using the magic of the computer inside of this camera, it will pick the best one of those, and it will save only that one. Your color options are standard color, vivid, black and white, sepia, cyanotype. I would suggest going with standard. This adjusts the color output that the JPEGs receive, and you can't change that. It's not easy to anyway. If you leave it in standard, what you can do is then apply any of these or myriad other different types of finishing options in post, and you won't lose the original quality of the image. Autofocus area mode is automatic or center, whether you want autofocus to be in the center of the frame or auto, wherever it wants to focus. So let's say that you were photographing people with their face in the center of the frame. Center autofocus with center weighted metering would be a really good way to go about that, because you would get their faces in focus and properly exposed. Autofocus mode, whether it is single shot or continuous. Once focus is locked, it will stay locked until you take the picture. Focus will track and continue adjusting until you take the picture. Single servo is a lot faster on this camera. And that's it. That is everything in the menu. Next thing we're going to do is talk about how to take a picture with this camera. And it's pretty easy. What you're going to do is you're going to dial in whatever settings you want it to dial in that we just saw. You're going to frame up your image on the screen. What you see on this screen is what's going to be taken by the camera. You're going to zoom in if you need to, or you're going to zoom out if you need to. And then you're going to hold down the shutter button, and take a picture. And then once you take a picture, you can see that, yes, I'm waiting. Okay, you can see that I'm wearing a white shirt because it reflects better the studio lights and gives better illumination throughout the entire video area. Okay, great. Let's just delete that. I'm actually not wearing a shirt at all. I'm just super pale. And that is that. That's how you take a picture. Super easy. Some tips for using this camera. I would say your best tip is going to be to keep the use simple. Really simple. Shoot JPEGs, disable your image effects, let the camera take the shots, and then share them, or edit and then share them. 6.2 megapixels is more than suitable for the social medias, so if you need a camera you can risk destroying at the beach or under a waterfall or something like that, this is it. This is I think this cost me like $9, so I mean they are pretty darn cheap now. So if you need something, you can just throw a couple of single-use AA batteries in, strap it to your backpack, and if it falls down the side of a mountain, yeah, it sucks because it pollutes the mountainside, but it's not an $1,800 camera that pollutes the mountainside. It's also very small and fits well in almost any pocket, so if you're going to get one of these or have one of these, carry it with you and use it. Also, don't use it for video. The video capture is 640 by 480, which is a TV resolution, an old TV's resolution, at 15 frames per second, or if you want to go up to 30 frames per second, you can, but only at 320 by 240 resolution. Now, I gotta say, those resolutions were pretty great in 1997, but not 2005, and definitely not in 2021. So while that could be used solely for creating low-res GIFs to share, it's not really going to be usable for actual video. One other thing is that this camera is painfully slow. Even contemporary reviews of it from 2005 called it slow. So if you use it today, Your patience is going to be needed, and you saw how long it took to write that one JPEG that we took during this video. It's a slow camera. It is almost as slow as a 4x5. Not quite, but almost. Thank you for watching this video. Please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that I'm on the right track producing content which is useful and helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comments section below. I'm pretty good about checking these every couple of days and answering questions. If you have any suggestions or ideas for future videos, and if I have the technical know-how and equipment, I'm more than happy to make those. One last thing. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I gotta get up, Steinbeck. I have to turn off the camera.